Hello, everybody. What's up?
What's going on?
Welcome to CLCI Live. And we've got a big crew
Wow,
with
mute
us
yourself.
today. We've got already audio problems with this crew. So before we get started, we want to remind everyone to like, comment, share. No, that's at the end. What am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to say comment. Yes, please comment. We would love to hear what you have to say. Even though we have a lot of people in this crew, we know that you have something to add and we would love to hear it. So, did I miss anything?
What's our topic today?
You know, I'm going to let somebody else introduce our topic. Who is the lucky winner?
I'll do it.
Let's go.
I'll take a swing at it. So today we're going to talk about why this thing up here in our brain housing groups are so hardwired to focus on the negatives and what we can do to focus more on the positives. So that's going to be our topic for today.
It's a game for you psychology nerds. It's called cognitive reframing, where you have a frame where you look at the world, and if you don't like the way that you look at the world or it's not serving you, you can just reframe, have a different perspective.
Poof, it happens just like that, right?
Yep,
Poof.
very easy. Just think differently. See, this is kind of this is getting like almost close to The Secret kind of stuff. You guys know The Secret. Like, you just think. What do you?
that?
Can't hear you, bro. I know you're saying no.
No, because The Secret is about like
I'm saying it's close. It's not it. I'm not saying it is, but it's like almost.
The Secret is like you put the energy out there, you'll get the energy back, and like that kind of, but it's like I'm gonna manifest success in my life just by thinking about it and not taking action. And it gets to that point with The Secret, just kind of silly. This is reframing. It really is what we're doing is being able to look at a situation differently. We don't have to get all spooky woo woo secret with it. This is something that's very grounded in hard and fast, capable of proving the results kind of ways.
I'm gonna be a butthead now and say, isn't there only one correct way to look at a situation? It's just there's the situation that's right in front of me, and I'm observing it. That's the correct way.
No, we've not correct. First and foremost, we're going to get down into a philosophical debate, but I think we've done an entire live about black and white thinking. And with that, I mean, outside of like mathematics, correct and incorrect are very subjective terms. So I would caution anybody to be delving into this is the correct way to look at things. Like, well, maybe it's not, and it could be different from person to person. Mm-hmm. Also, when we talk about this, one of the things I want to talk about is first, like, our experience in this space, and then also how it applies to coaching. So I think that it's important for us to address like our experience first, because that's sort of the human, tangible way of us to understand these things, and then we can take that and apply it to the coaching space. So what do we think reframing is about? Like, what does reframing mean to you guys? I'm just gonna call people out.
So now there's so many of us.
Sure.
Yeah,
I didn't want to speak over anyone. I know we have a lot of people here. The question, what does reframing mean to me, just in the general sense of reframing? So first of all, can everyone hear me all right? All right, cool. Yes, so reframing, if you speak about it in the general sense, it can simply be a shift in how you look at certain things, perspectives. When you look at, or you think of something, you look at something, you look at that thing. If you're reframing something, you're looking at the things around the thing. You're looking at the thing from another angle. So you can see a square from one perspective, you can see a cube from another. So now you've reframed what it is that you're looking at in your head. That's where I'm at. Hopefully that answered that question.
Kyle?
Oh gosh, I'm getting called out. Reframing to me, I guess, is just like taking your daily instances or something that happens throughout your life and not thinking the worst can happen, although that's like your human perspective. You're in your genes to maybe think negative and be a protective, but it's being positive and trying to find maybe a different perspective on looking at an outcome that's not necessarily hurting your mental state. So that's reframing to me on where I'm coming from this.
So reframing for you, specifically moving things to a positive space. I think that for me, it can be we can be moving anything in any way. I mean, truthfully, we could reframe something to be good, bad, horrible, awesome, exciting, boring. I think that's pretty crazy when you think about it, that we can look at something and decide how we want to interpret it. Anthony.
Yeah, so with reframing, I think people, speaking generally, have a certain framework that they interpret the world through, and some things are under the surface, and you're not really, cognizant of it all the time. So I come with a frame where I'm a man. I live in the United States, California. I have certain liberal points of view, and I, live in the 21st century. So I approach things in a certain framework. Whereas if I read a book by somebody written in the 1800s, they have a completely different framework that they're looking at the world through. So when you're reframing, you're making a conscious choice to try to look at the world through the way someone else would. Reframing can happen, accidentally. Like your frame could be changed, or the way you interpret the world can be changed without you wanting it to be, and that's often like a very sometimes traumatic or overwhelming experience for people. But doing it consciously, you can just do it for your worldview. Like if my worldview is a pessimistic worldview, or I'm a victim, most of the time is my worldview. You're taking a step to think, okay, what would this situation look like if I was this person, or I had this personality trait? And then you're trying to work through that, how that could like be possible, that specific point of view being possible. And if that's a point of view you like or works for you, then you keep reframing it towards things that are beneficial to you.
So it's interesting, as you're sharing, you brought up an interesting point, which is the fact that things can be reframed for us sort of against our will, or suddenly, or what does that mean when he says that? What does that mean to you guys when he says that? How about one of the ladies? Lisa?
So when you say that reframe, it could be reframed in any way. I'm not following what the question is. What does it mean to me, I think is what you asked.
I was talking more specifically about when something is reframed for you sort of against your, it just, life happens, right? And suddenly it could be traumatic because now you thought life was one way and it's not.
Yeah, I thought of an instance, someone misinterpreting the intentions. Like, say, I had a set of intentions. I thought I was following through with those intentions, and they misinterpreted what I view as a misinterpretation, but they view it as a completely different frame of reference. And that's been tragic. Definitely been tragic in that experience of what I thought the direction was versus what they thought the direction was. And there was no amount of convincing and trying to share that thought process I had in that moment. There's nothing that could change the outcome to change that to the negative thought to the positive thought. That's heartbreaking experience. Where'd Brooke go?
He is not.
I'm hiding so you can't see me. So as you were sharing, I can think of a couple like tangible examples of maybe traumatic reframes. Is let's say you have a spouse that cheats on you, and you think that the world is one way, and suddenly, boom! Oh my goodness! Now I'm seeing everything that's happened over the last year from a whole new lens, and every little action, every little thing, every little question, every little becomes now seen in a totally different light, right? Sam,
trust is blown.
What's up?
I saw you like.
No, I'm listening to this because I know people who've gone through that. I've lived with people who have gone through that, and it's, I don't say interesting in a way where it's like, oh, that's really interesting in a good way. It's interesting to see how their worldviews are so warped by that one thing. And it's actually really sad coming from somebody who's married to hear what someone says about marriage, about women, about dating, love, and relationships. I have one way that I look at things because of my upbringings and even some of the things I've gone through. This individual's gone through something totally different, and now they're jaded in a sense from anything even similar to that. So when you said that, that's what I was thinking of. It's just like, oh, how sad.
I mean, take it one step further. I've seen couples that they were once happy and now they're about to split, right? Mm-hmm. And suddenly you've heard this phrase, all the cute things that they do now annoy me. Like you've heard people say that.
Annoying.
All of I mean, no, everything he doesn't do, and they start to speak in these very grand, like he doesn't ever do anything. There's nothing he's ever done for me. There's nothing. And we sort of get to these polar thinking spaces. And at that moment, I think what they're doing a lot of times is reframing everything about this other person in preparation to sort of split up with them, to make it easier to like, okay, I don't want to be with this person anymore. So now I'm looking at everything through this very critical, very I'm annoyed lens. Interesting. I mean, I think a tangible example that people can relate to of how we can flex into different spaces depending on what we want, and choose to look at situations depending on truthfully what we want. I've seen people who are not in a moment, I won't say that they always are this way, but more on the manipulative sort of spectrum of things, where they will decidedly begin to decide something they want. And so now they start to reframe situations for themselves and other people to get that. And will just kick things to the door. And it's just an interesting
isn't that what marketing is as well, though, when you think about reframing?
Ooh.
I would say yes, marketing. Reframing, though, I think depending on what you're marketing, it really depends on what you're marketing.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a brand new product, you probably don't have a need for a reframe unless maybe it's a new invention that rethinks the way you drink water or something like that, right?
Well, in marketing, there's not really a reframing that's happening. It's the process of framing in the first place for your whoever your ideal client is. So you get to decide what your message, how it frames your coaching and the services you're offering. So there was one video that used this example, but I'll like adapt it for coaching. 70%. I'm a relationship coach, and 70% of my clients end up having successful marriages. I could also frame it as 30% of my clients end up in divorce. There's different ways to frame it, and you will find greatly different levels of success depending on how you frame your message to your ideal clients. But that's like outside of the coaching. That's more so your marketing.
Funny, if we're in the marketing space, example that brings this to mind, and it's kind of it's a less like deliberate, tangible way of framing things, but there are oftentimes advertisers will not like to advertise during like shows that are like very true crime or traumatic, or they won't want their commercials run right after a really sad scene, because all of those people are essentially, they have been primed, they have been framed to be in this really sad, miserable space, and so they're far less likely to buy. So a lot of shows will say, okay, in the contracts, do not run our commercials after a sad, negative, or traumatic scene. we only want to run after those like feel good, awesome moments. And so those become kind of like end caps, right? They become these advertising times that are sought after, because they know that their product, they're all those people are going in primed and ready to buy. They're in a great mood. Life is good. And their oxytocin is good. They're going to buy.
Oh, yeah. I literally just went through this yesterday. We were watching, what was it? I think it was The Rookie. After a sad scene, don't ask me what the commercial was after that. I was too busy being like, what the heck just happened? So thank you for bringing that. Oh, man. No,
Yeah.
man.
I think that brings up a really interesting point, because our thoughts are affected, I think, by emotions. So kind of like what Brooke was saying, for an example, say you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you get in an accident, you spill coffee on your shirt, you're going to be more likely to think pessimistically about a certain situation and maybe not necessarily take away what actually happened in that scenario. So you might think negatively if somebody came up to you, maybe you asked your boss for a raise that day. And because you had such a terrible day in the morning, you're like, oh, why did I even waste my time to do that? And you're thinking negatively about that situation. You're not really considering all the factors that maybe led to you potentially getting that raise. Not thinking about the fact that you've been a good employee for this certain amount of time and you did this. I think emotions play a huge role in how we can frame things and reframe things.
I would go as far as to say they are the pivotal
Yeah.
role. They play a pivot, like they are really ultimately whatever happens. What do we have control over? How we react to it, how we feel about it, all of these, life happens, but good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. I mean, however, you may not call them good or bad, things are going to happen. What we are in control of is our responses. And that, though, sometimes feels impossible to some people, which is another frame, isn't it? I have no control over how I react, my emotion. I have no control. I can only feel this way about this thing. That's the sort of victim space, right? I'm where you've just given it up.
Yeah.
Sam?
In a sense, that's both true and false. True in the sense where if you try to take control of your emotions in the heat of that moment, good luck. Like the battle's already on. Like proverbial rounds are already flying and there's no time to prepare at that point. But if you're in that space of peace, when you're in that space of calmness and still, you have that ability to start framing what you are going to do in the midst of something that might trigger you. We talk about this in our classes. It's about asking yourself what triggers you might have, what biases you might have. They're all rooted in some kind of emotion that we've chosen to take on or something that we've unconsciously taken on because we're the products of our environment. Like, here's what you think about this kind of person or this kind of thing, versus here in this space where you're calm, just start thinking yourself, okay, what do I want to start believing about something? How do I want to start responding versus reacting? So I think if you do that, you'll have a better chance of taking control of your responses to the moment. Hopefully that makes sense.
We've added to the conversation as well. Our filters affect our framing too. I had something with an email today that I framed negatively, yet objectively my reaction isn't necessarily supported. Funny you should say that about filters. Email filters, I had a really good lesson about the really objective part about framing, because I've had some emails where I've set up my filters and I framed it so any email coming from this source, not important. Lo and behold, I ended up missing a really important email from that, and that's what I get for framing things negatively with a literal filter. But to your point, Sue, yes, your filters that you set up for yourself, that information will pass through. If you say that's negative, then everything's going to look negative through that filter. If you say it's positive, everything's going to look nice and rosy through those glasses as well.
When I'm in the middle of reframing something, I have to think about what my intention is. It's really coaching myself in that sense. I have to think about, what is it that happened? I have to think about really what is my intention? What is it that I want my outcome? And how do I need to rethink or reframe the who I am in that process, or the steps I need to take, et cetera, et cetera. So that ability to reframe, I think, is an important skill, one that we use with our coaching, but two that we use with ourselves in order to, well, I tend to like to see and be more positive, right? That, I think somebody else said that. I don't remember who it was. If I get stuck in a negative thought process, part of it is also that I don't want to deny those thoughts because they're still part of me as well, right? I notice I'm starting to get a little emotional in my eyes, so bear with me as I speak. And in that place of not denying those negative thoughts, there's usually some point where I find the reframe, how it serves me. Somebody else used those words earlier as well. So in those streamline of thought, to go through a process for me that allows me to think about a given situation differently, usually allows me to get back into what I like to call calm or neutral state, so that I can really focus in on where to go and what to do and how to process. So when we're talking for me, reframe is a place where I can come down to doing the best look at a given situation as factual as I can. I think that's what I would say there.
So I have a couple questions that came up, and then we got to hear from Jen because I see your head nodding. So a couple questions that came up when you were sharing. My first one is, one of the things you said is, I will look and I will decide how I want to feel or how I want something to go. So is a reframe outcome dependent?
When you say outcome dependent, does it have to be 1 + 2 = 3? I'm going to say in the adaptability as I flow through it, not necessarily, but outcome dependent is there still. So I don't exactly know how to answer that.
Well, with clients, we don't know the outcomes when we're
Right.
coaching with them, but the client can frame however they feel about whatever outcome is. So they can, I'll ask them in a session, how would you feel if this didn't work out? How would you feel if this did work out?
Mm-hmm.
And then they can sort of set the frame for how they will feel when that outcome happens. Hopefully, things go their way, but that's not always the case.
Cam, I saw you nodding your head.
Well, okay. Jen, do you want to go first, or do you want me?
Jen,
Okay, all right. Since you're telling me, here we go. Is it outcome dependent? Kind of. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to answer this carefully. It's not so much that it's outcome dependent. Your desire to reframe has to be connected to something real about you. Otherwise, it's just arbitrary reframe for arbitrary reframe. And is it going to stick at that point because it's not connected to anything real with you? I say no, it's not going to. So is there going to be a tangible outcome, like I'm going to reach out my arm so I can grab this can of empty Coke Zero? Not something. It doesn't have to be as black and white or in your face. It just has to be something that is truly real. That's what I say to that.
So that dovetails kind of into the second question I had, which was, and it's in the same space. So I'm not even going to comment on what was just shared, because when we talk about reframing, how does it work on a timeline? Are we reframing for the future, or are we reframing for the past? Jen.
Yeah, both. And so I'll give you an example. And also my definition, I wanted to see how this lands with you guys, for reframing is simply finding another truth. So like Anthony gave that example about 70-30, both are true or could be true. My example, which is also relevant to past, present, future reframe, It took me nearly a decade to get a 4-year college degree. I used to think that that made me not great. I used to think that that made me negative things. I used to feel shame about it. I used to be embarrassed about it. And then the reframe that I built into my life that has changed the way I feel about that experience and the way I feel about myself is that I acknowledge that it took me nearly a decade to get a 4-year college degree because I had an undiagnosed disease that was causing me to have excessive sleepiness. So I was falling asleep for 10 years trying to get a 4-year degree. And I used to feel ashamed about that. And when I shifted it to, not that it took me 10 years to get a college degree, but I got a college degree despite the fact that I was falling asleep every day in class for 10 years. Holy shit. That's amazing. It changed everything for me going forward. It's a reframe from my past, but it affects how I feel about myself now and how I go forward and talk to other people.
And so I would agree with you. It's a now and going forward. It's not reframing the past because you can't really reframe. You can't change how you thought in your history. You can change today on what your thoughts are about a given situation that you had in your history.
Okay.
So it's the now. I can plant this. I know what this means to me. And that creates a little neural connection in your brain that says, aha, I've got this neural path now that now I can build on for future concepts. So when you were sharing, that's what I was hearing. I heard how you took your experience, you shared how you had thought about it, you changed your interpretation of it, and then that opens the possibilities for all of these amazing future concepts. Thanks for sharing.
So Jen reminded me of a hardcore reframe I did. Like a hard, and it was actually like a twofold reframe. It was like 2 times over reframe. And this was a reframing that took like years to get into effect essentially, but because it was a process. It was a process for me, and this is around my my attack. I was almost murdered, and when you come out of something like that where you've almost been murdered, there's so many things that happen with you psychologically. Like, I can't trust myself. How did I get into this situation? How did this happen to me? I can't trust myself because this happened, right? A lot of people think that you're just going to blame the other person, but I immediately went to a space of, oh my God, I'm blaming me. And now I'm scared. I can't trust myself. How can I trust anything else when I can't trust myself? So, but then I found that if I stopped framing myself as a victim and I started framing myself as somebody who's capable of identifying the choices I made and the red flags I saw, the moments that happened, how I could the next time, how I was a different human being, that I was somebody now capable of understanding what those things were, that I would not get myself into that same situation. And that brought me a tremendous amount of comfort. I still had fear though. I still had all this fear. I still had all these things. And I, the whole time I was thinking, oh my God, I can't trust myself. How can I trust myself coming out of this? And I think it was Lisa that actually said this to me one time. We were discussing this, and we were discussing about how I was, how scared I have all this fear, and there's this fear, and how do I handle it? And when I realized that I saved my own life, at the end of the day, in that attack, I was the one who managed to scramble and grab a phone and call 911 and get them there. And I saved my own life. And I also stood trial. I also got on a stand and faced that person, and all of those things. And I was like, wow, because you feel so weak. And then when I reframed that, and I was like, oh my God, I saved my own life at the end. I not only that, I've hopefully done something that will save somebody else's. That for me was a really powerful way to stop being scared it helped me so much in stopping being scared, was just to give myself that credit and stop looking at it like really truthfully, like it was something that happened to me and I had no effect in it and just happened, but go, hey, wait, no, there was something I did that was kind of awesome in this. And that completely changed the way I looked at that incident in my life. So, and
So
that definitely affects my future. You know, that fear is not there like it once was. It certainly is not.
So then let's say then as coach is sitting down with you, Brooke or Jen, and you're telling them this before the reframe happened. You have your frame that you're not entirely comfortable with. Is it the coach's job to reframe the situation for the client if they see that there? Or is it the coach's job to maybe suggest, is there a way to reframe this to the client and invite them to reframe it? Jen?
So I actually came to my reframe through a coaching session. So I feel like I can speak to this a little bit. I'm not sure if it was right, but it worked for me. It was simply, I was sharing my version, my story, my narrative of who I was. And I was sharing it from a perspective of, I'm the victim of this, this disease, this condition that caused me to not, be a functioning adult. And I, just took forever to go through college, and it's so sad. It's so pathetic. And she said, I'm hearing something else. I'm hearing this strength. I'm hearing this perseverance. I'm hearing this drive, this, you never gave up, and look at where it got you. And it was like, what? Oh my God. Again, finding another truth. Both were true. It just depends on which way you look at it. And when I got offered that other way to look at it, I never looked back, because that felt like, oh, that's it. That's me. That's my truth. That's the one that I'm going to carry with me.
Oh yeah.
So one question, what, in carrying that with you, what did that, how has that changed your world?
I don't carry guilt or shame over taking almost a decade to get a college degree. And I did before. I carried guilt and shame. I used to think maybe I shouldn't have even gone to college. Maybe it was a total waste. I'm not even using my degree anyways. What does it matter? All of that. And so I carried all of that with me into my daily life, into my interactions with everybody. You could see it on me. There was this piece of me that was just clinging to that. And when I saw the opportunity to release that, never look back.
So there's a question in the
Wait. First, get Sam. Sam is excited back there. I gotta give Sam, and then we'll do the question.
Well, actually, they're kind of related. First things first, if we have learned anything in this live stream, it's that the people at CLCR are freaking awesome. All right, Jen, Brooke, big ups to y'all. All right. To answer Anthony's question, is it our job to reframe our client's world for them? Directly speaking, no, it's not. Are we to hold that space for them to get that opportunity for a reframe, much like Jen went through? Absolutely. So it kind of goes to the question, and I kind of thought that was going to come at some point. How do you find that balance? And I don't want to take away from the answering to that question, but as coaches, if the client is going down that road themselves through the words that they're speaking and the coach is following, that's one thing. If the coach is looking at it from an outside view and saying, I need to get this client to reframe their world, that's where we're going to draw the line there, because as we learn here, it's a client-led process. And if that's where the client's going, so it all depends on what was said before and what's said after, context of the conversation, to Anthony's point.
Yeah, and Brian, if you guys want to put up Brian Mitchell's question so everybody can read it, how do you find the balance between leading a client into a reframe and DSM-5 realities? Does it mean nailing the intake and understanding more about your client from the start? I don't know if it means you have to always nail the intake, and because there's only so much you can learn from that intake before it becomes a friction rather than an easy process to get to you. But when you're in that situation, like let's say any sort of past trauma happens and it's brought up in the coaching session, and there's an opportunity for a reframe, of course, that's a place where as a coach you want to tread carefully, because I'm not trained in the DSM-5, nor am I a psychologist. But there are opportunities that arise where you as a coach can ask, well, is there another way that someone else could see the situation? Is there an alternative point of view out there? And open the door for exploration, without really having to address like the psychological or trauma aspect of that.
Lisa, I want to kick it back over to you too.
So I had a lot of dogs barking, and I'm not sure of all that Anthony said. So if I repeat what he said, please bear with me. But going down the highway of answering, it's you following the client. You're following what that client is saying. When Jen shared, she got to share her whole story. We didn't interrupt and say she should have done this or She told her story. As we go down in the beginning of our coaching, we kind of pick into what exactly we hear our client is saying. But there is a time when you become more seasoned and you're not using your own filters in this space. You become more seasoned with the process, trusting the process and what you're hearing that client say. But you're also hearing what they don't say. This is not the place of what you think they ought to be saying. There's a huge difference in that practice of learning to really listen to what that client says allows you to grow within the coaching process to hear the words that they're not saying, yet they really are saying. So I'm going to go on a limb and guess that that's what happened in, Jen's experience as well, in that place where her coach heard her speak about how she still got up and went to class. She still did this in class. How she accommodated herself. And so those words that Jen didn't speak became really loud and clear in that exchange. That also takes time for you and your client to get into the process of coaching and trusting the process. I'm going to say mostly it doesn't. Can it happen the first time? Yes. But I'm going to say it mostly doesn't, because there's usually that learning to grow into the process of coaching. So as far as DSM-5, like Sam said, I think Anthony said, we don't utilize that therapy side of things. That's not for us. We refer out in that space. Nailing the intake, I think nailing is an expectation that may disengage the ability to grow into the experience of that coaching session. Understanding that client, there's times that I have gotten a client in that first session and we are down that reframe highway rather quickly. As there are other times we might be in session 7 before it ever comes out. So anyway.
Yeah, Brooke.
One question, okay, so where I think that if we look at the question, and I'm just probably being overly analytical here, but how do you find balance between leading a client into a reframe and DSM-5 realities? Does it mean nailing the intake and understanding more about your client from the start? So where I think that I would say probably no, truthfully, because I think that the reality is when we talk about removing blocks, When we talk about limiting beliefs, when we talk about these sort of things, we are talking about things that affect our clients, and those things that are affecting our clients are going to come out at some point, right? And we're going to have to ask questions around them. I think the big difference between knowing that people are human and have experience and have limited beliefs, have things in their past that probably could serve them to reframe, and somebody who is suffering currently through a trauma and is still very much in that space where they haven't processed it. Somebody who's got a genuine clinical DSM-5 thing going on. I think that we need to take the time to really learn, I guess, what those differences are, so that we can then go, okay, wait, people will have moments. I mean, the way we teach how to, that is part of coaching. So I think it would be unrealistic to not think that our clients at some point won't bring up things like Jen has, where they, oh, well, and it's probably going to be in passing. It'll probably be said lightly, or it'll be said, I can't do that. And that's when we ask why, and we start to inquire. And those, I think, become where these really pivotal reframe moments happen. But I do think reframing is a very pivotal part of coaching.
Yep.
So what we've been addressing with the reframing has been a lot to do with the past, which we as coaches don't really tend to dwell in the past so much. At least in our training, we're more future oriented, because dwelling in the past can get into some muddy issues, such as like coaching the ghost, therapy, accidentally giving therapy or mental health advice, things like that. So how do we transition reframing from strictly how a client views their past or a past situation and applying it to the future and how they're going to act differently with a new frame in mind?
A simple question: how does that serve you?
What's going on with you today?
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
I think too, if we're talking about, you know, like for me specifically with my example, I had a lot of fear. That fear was preventing me from getting out there and meeting people in the world and making friends, right? So my goal in that situation would be, well, I want to get out there and make friends. This is something I want to do. Well, but I got all this fear, and I feel like I'm scared that I can't trust myself. I'm scared that these things, and so for a coach, if that's what I came to you guys with, where I want to make friends, but you know, I have a lot of fear around it. I feel like, you know, I've had some pretty crazy things happen in my past, and it's made me afraid to interact with people. But I know that's something I want to do, and I'm here because I want to make a plan to do that. What would you guys ask in that space?
I'll take a swing at it. First things first, it really all depends on how many sessions this is with you. If I know that if I've been with you several times in a coaching session, I might be a little bit more, not like provocative, but challenging in the sense, okay, so repeat what you said before, Brooke. Like, what's the action plan that you want to walk away with?
So I want to walk away. I want to start getting out there and meeting people. I'm tired of being alone all the time, and I want to get out there and I want to meet people.
Okay. So what will you need to see to know that you're not alone? That might be a question I ask.
Ooh, that's a powerful question, by the way. It's an interesting one too, though, because I think for me, it's less about being alone and being loneliness in this moment, and more about, but I guess it was too. It certainly was. But yeah, I wanted human connection. I wanted like real life, in person human connection. I wanted to be able to get out and interact in person with other people. So how will I know that I will be doing that? Right. And then the other side of that too is I don't want to be asking myself if I'm going to live every time I leave my house. Like in every social situation I go into, I have a moment where I go, am I going to am I going to live through this? And it creates a whole panic. And so then I would really like to stop doing that. Like I would like to just get out there and just go and have it be unafraid. Be just like, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to see people and it's not going to be terrifying.
So, then with two things that you brought up, is the alleviation of loneliness the same, or does it produce the same outcome as finding human connection?
I wouldn't say I'm doing this because I'm lonely. I'm doing this because I'm ultimately an extrovert that's been living a life as an introvert, and it doesn't know. I don't know how to. I don't know how to just put myself out there. Like I feel like, you know, and this is the true me when, you know, I feel like I've gotten through a lot of this, but the true me then, and even I have moments of this now. There's me at 20. I knew what to do, where to go, how to meet people. It was no problem. And there was so many situations where that opportunity presented itself. Me at 40, it seems exponentially more difficult. And often coupled with all these fears and concerns and other things. And it's a lot of times don't even know where to start, so I don't even try. Thank you, Sam.
It gets me every time. Every time. I'm just like,
messages.
Sam wrote what we were all thinking, that Brooke doesn't look 40.
Right.
every time it gets me. I'm telling you.
So, Brooke, I would probably ask you, what is it costing you to continue living life as an introvert when you feel like an extrovert?
I come to life around people. Like I can be home all day and, you know, doing things, and I'm in my head and I'm just sort of going through the motions. But the moment I'm around other people and connecting with other people, and it's like my light turns on. It's like bliss, you know. I love interacting with human beings. I love learning about people. I love interacting with them, and so like that's why it was such like a flip for me to be somebody who was so extroverted, social, out there, and now here I am not that person, and I don't even know. I'm going into these situations and there's like I don't even know where to start. Right. A lot of times, and there's so much silly insecurity around it too. Yeah.
Did anyone notice she didn't even answer the question?
Oh, what was the question? I missed it, apparently. How did I not answer it? Oh, what is it costing me? Well, it's costing me all of that. It's costing me, for me, there you go, non-linear right there. It's costing me the price of that feeling, of that, the joy of being around other people, of human connection, of just having a tribe, having people to hang out with and meet and do things with it, and you know, being bored on a Saturday night and having an option other than watching TV. You know.
So I think what maybe we just observed with you, Brooke, wasn't like a total reframe, but the frame got enlarged.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bigger frame that we're working with now that includes the motivational aspects of why you want to have more friends, and the costs of not doing it, and the benefits that you will get from enlarging your social network. Go on.
Really good point, and that just brought something to my mind with me, and didn't even an application for reframing that I hadn't even considered. Right, for us as coaches, right? If we as coaches, there's a couple things that go on, right? How are we as coaches framing our clients?
This is, wait, is that a rhetorical question, or is that something? Okay. How are we framing our clients? Ooh, I think that is so. It's something I talk about in level 1. It's like, if the way you look at your clients is going to either create the temptation or stuff down the impulse to give them advice or lead them down a path. If you look at them as somebody who needs your help, needs your insights, and as soon as they say, I don't know, you have that game of advice on quick draw with them, it's because you've looked at them as they won't get the answer without me. But if you look at them as whole, complete, resourceful, innovative, in a sense, even when they don't know, it's going to be much easier for you to lean back and let them figure things out on their own, which is what ICF coaching calls for in the first place.
I think a lot of newer coaches too, the initial framework that is kind of assumed is that something is wrong with the client and coaching can fix it. The client is not getting a result they want through coaching. The coach delivers the result. That is not exactly how I think a lot of us here conduct our coaching, but in my personal experience, I don't conduct my coaching that way. Where the coach might be tempted, okay, let's reframe this and then go with a narrative that, either assuages the client's fears or works for them, regardless whether or not it's true or not. It might be a different kind of truth, but you're throwing out the bad truth that's not working and making a new truth that does work. Another way to frame the client is you're making their frame bigger so that they consider the whole truth in its ugly and nicer aspects so that the client can make a well-informed decision and make a well-informed plan how to get what they want. So that's how I frame the client, but there's probably a bajillion other ways to do that too.
I think too, as a coach, we might start with our frame of our client being this big, but as we get deeper and deeper, the frame is going to become a lot bigger and bigger for us as coaches. And I think it's important that it gets bigger. And I think it's also important that we realize and frame it as we don't have all the answers because we're just scratching the surface. So that's why we got to dig and remain in that curious place and keep asking those questions so that we can make and understand the frame better and understand how to ask and assist our clients so that they can do the same.
Definitely.
And really what I'm hearing is this: it's educating ourselves in the process of who that client is and wants to be. And we can't be educated unless we really listen. There's a lot of words out there that says, just listen, we got 2 ears to listen, let's talk. The idea is just listen at that deeper level and really hear what the client is saying. And when we do that, I should not have their answers.
No. There was something that I don't remember exactly when it came up, but as far as having a frame for our clients is concerned, I think it's important that we as coaches periodically check in with ourselves to see if we even have that frame, because sometimes it's a lack of frame or a lack of awareness of the fact that we have a frame that can trip us up. And that moment, again, where the client doesn't seem to have an answer in a coaching session, or session 3, session 4, session 5 rolls along and they don't seem to be moving forward, those perceived failures or plateaus are going to create a frame for us where we look at our clients as unable to find an answer. Now we got to jump in there. So I always say I'm meeting my clients for the first time every time. I'm meeting them every time as whole, as complete. Even if they plateau, they're still being met for the first time, and I can ask more about whatever plateaus there are, either the client or am I looking at this as a plateau or am I just being impatient here? And again, leaving it up to them to show off I say this appropriately, the beauty of their frame. That is where I'm going to stop right there before I say something weird.
So guys,
You get what I mean though, right?
I have one question for all of you. What does your frame look like?
Strong and
My
healthy.
frame is like,
Man.
for you literary people out there, it's like, gosh dang it, what is that book called? It's by Oscar Wilde. The portrait of Picture Dorian Gray.
Dorian Gray, yeah.
Yeah, if I look at it, then I'll die. So I can't analyze my own frame. That's the answer to my question.
I would say my frame has a bunch of smiley faces around it because I try to look at everything glass half full. Obviously, when emotions kind of take over sometimes, you think of things pessimistically, but I do my best to always remain in that frame mindset that things in the end are always going to work out.
Kyle?
Frame look like-
Kyle?
My frame. I would say my frame is still being worked on being a strong frame. I think there's a lot of still figuring out to make. I have a lot of time to go to learn life and to deal with some of these. Like Sam said, every day you're a new person and meeting a new person. So I feel like there's a lot of framework to still be built, but I do see a lot of positive on one side and a lot of work to be doing maybe on the other.
Sue shared her frame. My frame is changing colors and shape, getting bigger to see the farthest horizon and space around it and the wonder and adventure in it.
She beats
Lisa,
us all.
Ben, Sam, Jerome, what are your frames?
I think I just said mine, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
We heard, yeah. So Jen, Sam, Lisa.
Go ahead, Jen.
My frame is through the lens of love. It's so cheesy, but it's so true. And also empowerment, love and empowerment. I am always looking for more. And when I'm in a situation or I see others in a situation where they may be missing that lens, I offer it.
For what it's worth, Jen, I don't think that was cheesy at all. The frame of love, even if you think it sounds cheesy, like, listen, this world needs it, all right?
Yeah, everybody likes cheese, okay? So that's
Yes. Okay.
I'm gonna eat Jen's frame, apparently.
So I'd say my frame is follower of God, day in, day out, learning what that means to walk it out practically as a husband, as a friend, as a family member, and just being sensitive to that lead and wherever it takes me for the rest of my life.
Lisa?
I love everybody's frames. I think it's all interactive. I think the connections. So I'm trying to describe my frame. It's an open, interactive frame, one that changes and yet still remains the same. It's one that has its humanness, but it is, the fluidity of it and the ability to learn from it, the love and cheesiness of Jen's as well. Love and empowerment. Yeah, kind of like the one behind me. Yeah.
Brooke?
My frame is a goofy frame. But it's a solid one. It's a consistent one. It's that's I think a very I guess you could say cornerstones of my frame is that it's solid, but it is goofy and fun. So while it can take life seriously, it knows to laugh and not take it too seriously. I think that's all my frame needs to be right now.
A frame that does not look a day over 25.
Thank you.
Sam, you can come on again. I'm confident.
Right.
Brooke would appreciate it.
Just saying.
All right, that's it for us, guys. We did it.
Yay.
Woohoo!
Do we want to? I think we should close out here with Brian's comment.
Yeah.
He said, Sam said something profoundly powerful in level 1. It is way more powerful to be curious and interested in people than it is to strive to be interesting to people. And I've heard Sam say that as well. I agree 100%.
There you go.
And with that, we are done for today. So we'll see you next week, Tuesday, same time. Please like, share, comment on this. We will respond to you guys.
Hey, and you YouTube watchers, I'm calling you out specifically. Make sure you subscribe. Subscribe to our channel. Do it.
What
Thank
she
you.
said.
Join us on our 3-day intensives.
Yeah, take that too.
Have fun with us. Come on.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
See you guys.